Welcome everyone to the Voice of Terminus show, number 97. Oh my word.
What happened to my life?
So I've got Lex with me today. Say hello, Lex.
Hi everybody.
So, we're here to talk about the Heritage System. And this was an idea brought to me by Dayjhawk. And it's a pretty cool idea. It wasn't sought out for Pantheon on its own. It was more generalized towards MMOs in general. Something that anybody could technically pick up. And we thought, you know,
Just a neat idea.
it's a neat idea, and why not try and talk about it and see if this is something that, you know, VR could utilize maybe and profit from,
There's always room
expand
in the
on.
future.
Exactly. So bear with us with this. This is all just pure Theorycraft. This is nothing inherently connected to Pantheon whatsoever. It's just an idea that we thought was really cool. We want to bring it to you. So
This is very much a what if dream
Exactly.
show.
So, the basic idea behind the Heritage System is it would start off basically. Everybody's played, you know, MMOs with character creation systems where you create your character. You know, you add your stats, you go through your character customization, and then you go into your game. So the idea behind this is basically to add a little flair, a little immersion towards how you go about creating your character and going into the world, in that virtual world that you're in. And so what this basically would do is, before you go and create your character, you would kind of pick the race of your parents, your father and your mother, and based on the choices you make would determine the choices that you could make for your character going forward. So you would basically create a virtual mother, a virtual father, race. You could add maybe some background towards a family, maybe pick some kind of profession that the parents had, if they were noble, if they were poor, and kind of create like a little background story for you when you're going into the world for other people maybe to look up on. The basic idea from Dayjhawk was basically you would have a slider that is split into four: 25%, 50%, 75%, and 100%. Meaning that basically, as an example, if you had your Darkmere or a Halfling at 25%, and that would automatically default that 75% would go to the other parent. Meaning you would have like a 25% Darkmere and 75% human, as an example. And then you would obviously have maybe some character traits or racial traits, and depending on where the slider is, you would kind of be able to pick out some of the racial features, but limited obviously on the choices that you've made. And this will also, just a quick note for next week's show, this will also relate to that as well, the Heritage System. We're building basically next week's show off of what we talk about today to kind of make it fit and suitable. So that's basically the general idea behind this Heritage System. When we kind of looked at this and thought about what else can be done here, what can we add to this that would make it more interesting, what cool features could we add to add that little bit more immersion to your character's existence, to the background, to the lifestyle that you have, to the lore even. And we also looked at it from the point of the progeny as well. Is this something that could coexist with the progeny system? Is this something that could replace the progeny system even? And yeah. Lex, what were your first thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, there's a lot you can really do with this, and me being a programming kind of guy, I kind of looked at it as like with my character creation screen, you know, this could potentially lead up for some pretty interesting combinations, such as, say you have a Darkmere mother and a human father. This could potentially give you like certain visual traits of a Darkmere. It could give you skin tones that wouldn't normally be available because you're a half-breed or whatever you want to call it. It could open up different hairstyles, perhaps different facial features. It could, there's a lot of stuff you can do here. The technical background of it is pretty actually immense, right down to you could take like averages of both factions, melt them together to really give your unique character a unique starting point in the world. Which to me is, I'm not an RPer, I'm not anything like that, but I still think that would make a very unique challenge.
Definitely. Or
at least a unique perspective. And of course, there's always the whole gist. Scar. I'm a Scar.
Yeah.
Okay.
So something to point out real quick though, before we get into all the good stuff, is everybody that's been following us for quite some time always knows that for us, choice matters. This is something where we see it's not something that would be forced onto you. It's something you could do additionally if you are interested in doing this. We're all about pro-choice. You should be able to always be able to choose if you want to do this or not. So this is something that you could opt into. I know this would definitely feed into the RPers. I myself have a little RP in me, and when we started talking about this and breaking it apart and finding cool stuff, the more and more immersed I got into this system. I was bugging the hell out of Josh and Lex while we were talking about this. So there's a lot of stuff we can do here. And let's go and bring up some of the thoughts that we had. So I'm going to go start off reading the text from Dayjhawk to give you guys all the examples. The basic idea is that at character creation, instead of picking which playable race you want to be, instead you have a heritage screen. You pick the race of your parents, your father and your mother. Below each of them is a slider that moves based on 25% intervals. So 25, 50, 75 and 100. This slider affects how much one race affects your character's look and, well, as starting abilities, skills, resistances, racial abilities, as well as where you start in the world. The more you invest in one race, your parents, the more benefits you receive. This allows players to create half races and be able to kind of pick and choose their starting benefits. Once you have done this, you could play with the normal character creations options like height, weight, hairstyle, eye colours, etc. This slide could be based on so that both sliders can't go above 100% total. Example, 75% orc, 25% human. Choosing both heritage as the same race would make both sliders grayed out at 100%, gaining full benefit of that race. This would affect your character's starting location based on lore. Maybe certain cities view mixed breeds as outcasts, so instead you would start in a village outside their area. Maybe you could start in another city where you are welcomed. This of course would affect starting factions' relations with you as well. So this does mix into a lot of systems. We also, looked at this from a programmable side, how much work this would theoretically take, and so let's go and get into all of this. And something that we wanted to point out, Lex had a good idea about the slider. And he was talking about maybe, because let's say for instance you are of good and evil alignment at 50%. Where would you start? So he thought about adding maybe inclinements of 3%. To kind of give you that uneven balance. So you'll never hit 50-50, you'll always be at 49 or 51 all the way through. So basically you would always have a president that takes over and determines where you would start out. I do however like the idea of being an outcast maybe, or starting just outside the village of Throne Fast or Scargold, depending on what kind of race I am or where my majorities have slid towards. There's also things that would have to be considered as well, like race restrictions or combo restrictions. Certain things just don't fit together.
Well, we'll use, because we're using this as a general kind of what if feature show, not a Pantheon specific show. I'm just going to let you know I am going to use Pantheon as for my examples, because it's what we can all relate to. It's like, how would a gnome who's an energy-based being mate with the human? Well, you could get creative, but let's just assume they can't. Okay. So obviously, gnomes would be exempt from this.
Yeah.
They would not be able to participate. I can hear 1,000 voices, very high pitched screaming. No! But anyway, it's Scar. Scar hate everybody.
Yeah.
They would probably not be a part of this either. So obviously there would have to be. It would actually be one of the reasons in favor of playing one of the more standard races. I'm going to say, like your human and your elf, etc. And I mean the Archai too. We don't even know how they would ever cross, crossbreed or whatever. So obviously this isn't for Pantheon something that would be inclusive to everybody. No.
So it would definitely restrict some races, maybe. That's not to say that if a system like this were to happen, that through lore advancements things might change for the Scar or for the the gnomes. Just an example. Like I said, this is all just Theorycraft today, not so much relating to anything on Pantheon. But anyway, so adding dynamics to this heritage, like a background story. So you can maybe write up a little background story. Add professions or backgrounds of your parents, where they came from, if they were nobles, if they were in poverty, if they had a profession, like maybe a store owner, or they worked for the honorary guards, or they were militant. So that's kind of some of the things that we thought would be cool to add into it, just to give it a bit of flair. Even their social standing could also have an impact. So then obviously faction choices as well. Some of these dynamics to the heritage, we also went in and had a look at some of the bonuses one could receive through these choices that you make. So one would be region, city, village. Let's say, for instance, you are limited to or you're locked out of a city, for instance, because of the choice you've made. Now you might just be outside the outskirts of that city, or even further away in the region. And for this, you might be given a bonus to acclimation or to the climate within that indigenous area. So that's something that you could maybe benefit from. Same with faction. The way we looked at this was you get a very small bonus or choice, and basically, so you could pick your faction or 3 factions from your parents. That you have the 3 highest, the 3 lowest factions. You could make 6 choices you could take with you. That would also influence how you start off, because it could also happen that because of the choices, the way you've meddled with your heritage, you might have a negative standing all of a sudden with an obviously normally for the Scar positive faction, but because of the choices you made, you go into the negative maybe. So we thought a good way to kind of stabilize this and make it more utilizable would be to say you pick 3 of the highest and 3 of the lowest factions from your parents to kind of get you started. And that also that serves to mix things up a little bit for you. Yeah.
But it also means that you're not going to be like say you're a dark mirror human, for example. Dark mirror are evil. Humans are, just for all I know, good. And what if you end up becoming more of a dark mirror, but you want to start off in Throne Fast? That could if you didn't do something with the faction, that could potentially put you in a very bad spot. Because all of a sudden now you're surrounded by hostiles because nobody likes, you know, the fish fry.
Yep. This also adds, you know, unique twists to the way you perceive the game as well. So this would actually add true customization. You would feel more attached to your character. You would feel more embraced in the world. It would be, you know, because we've all heard it. Every single game out there promotes unique characters. And when you get into the game and you play the game, there's a flavor of the month. They all look the same. You know, at some point in time along the lines, they all have the same gear. They all look for the same weaponry, the same armor. That, you know, there's all that. One choice matters, basically. There's nothing really unique about it, and this would actually add this dynamic feature to it, making you feel like, hey, I'm a cleric, or I'm a scar, or I'm a human, but I'm different. I'm different to the guy next to me, or the woman next to me, and the one after that. We're all uniquely different because we've all picked some form of father and mother. We've messed around with the factions, social standings, and so forth and so forth. So that really does add that uniqueness towards your characters.
And it's a customization that is mostly hands off. Like, you don't go in and actually have to like mess with every single faction slider kind of thing, which would be just, oh my god. You know, it's provide the user with just a couple very simple choices, you know, but actually have those choices actually matter.
Yeah.
You know.
So,
and like I said, I'm not an RPer, but that would actually draw me in.
Yeah, definitely. So we even had a look at some of the things that you could do as a player to, you know, towards the customization. So maybe you could have like this will now kind of mix into the progeny system as well. So bear with us when we go about this. We will try and make all the connections so you understand this. And we thought about something like having a gravestone. And with that gravestone, you could theoretically add some input into it. It would be an item that you could, you know, lay down when you go and retire your character. This is now, we're looking at this now from the perspective of coexisting with the progeny system. So let's say, for instance, now you've gone about your way, you finally reached that time in the game, you've reached max level, you've gone through hell and back, and now you've now reached the rite of passage to progeny your character off. Some of the things that you could add to this would be like a retirement date, when you retired that character. Maybe add a small story, you know, telling of your final adventures. Maybe have a title choice that you could choose from. You could also add maybe checkboxes that would show off some of your character achievements. If you reached your epic quest, what your favorite perception quest may be, what your acclamation was, and what your favorite zone was, what your first quest was, what your favorite dungeon was or raid, who your best friend is, who you group with most. Maybe some discoveries that you made, or your first kill, your first death, your max damage, the strongest creature you fought off, the last guild you were in, your favourite mount. There's so much you could do with this to add to this onto your gravestone. So when people go and visit Lexa at the graveyard, they see Lexa's gravestone, they mouse over and they see what this character has done throughout his time in Terminus. You see his birth date and you see his date of retirement. So it's kind of like also adding a family tree online to a website. Some games like EverQuest 2 had the EQ players and EQ2 players, where you could look up people's characters and see what gear they were wearing. We would like to kind of see also a family tree maybe be added, and this will connect, the family tree will connect to something else that we have for adding heritage more on a player-to-player basis as well. So the family tree will connect to that as well. But Lex, you want to add anything to the customizations?
Well, I mean, in terms of customization, especially for character, there's way too many things to go into. What I will say about it is, it does sound like an awful lot of work for the developer side, but honestly, it's not. When you think about it, because all you're really doing is adding or removing additional character cosmetics based upon where that little slider would be between mother and father, if they're even the same, or even if they're even different races, you know. And in terms of like faction, your faction is just a list. Anyone who's a programmer can understand loops, where you just go through every item, and it's just a matter, you could take the top 3, you could take them all, whatever you want to do, and you could average them. You can take the percentage of the slider and say, okay, so this one's at 100, but we're 50% of others, so we're going to take half of that, and you know, there's a lot of math. We'll say it's a lot of math. I'm not going to get technical, but it's not that difficult, right? And all it serves is to just give you a more dynamic starting point. It really has very little bearing on the gameplay as a whole, besides just saying, my character truly is what I want it to be. Because faction can be changed, you know. Most people don't even really care about their appearances past, like, you know, mid-game, because then it's all about the items that you're wearing. So it's like, not a huge, it's just something, because let's face it, when you start a brand new MMO, sure, you're excited because you're excited about a game more often than not, but how exciting is the gameplay when you first start? Pretty boring. And if you make a lot of alts or whatnot, then, you know, it's just the same old thing over and over. And this would make it a little bit different, you know?
Yeah.
That's where I kind of get my interest in it.
It's, and again, to point out, this is something we see as pro-choice. You don't have to do this. You can choose to. You can look at the way traditional character creations happen, as though that would be your presets. You just pick a scar. Okay, let's change them up a little bit. Go. So this what this kind of does is, obviously it adds that immersion, that uniqueness to you, but it also, there's no advantages gained from using this system.
Not really.
You're just basically spicing up how you're going to approach the game, how you're going to be seen from within the world, how the NPCs are going to interact with you. So it kind of adds that little extra challenge, if you will. You can go the normal route, create your character, and off you go. You're basically, you would go with the presets determined by the game itself. With the Heritage System, you get to change those presets and relive the game from a different view. Maybe if you were normally a 100% Scar or 100% Darkmere, you might get a perception quest or be able to access a certain perception quest. But now, because of these changes you've made, you might not have access to that perception quest. But somewhere else down the line, you might have access to a perception quest that you didn't have before. You might have access to certain factions you didn't have before, or be restricted to certain factions. You might be killed on sight by certain NPCs where you weren't before if you had a normal character. So it kind of spices up things and mixes it all up and makes it really, really interesting and well thought out to go through. Because if we think about the early times of the Progeny system, when VR introduced it to everybody, there was quite a lot of confusion, uproar, people worried about retiring their character or technically putting it to rest. Yeah, and I was definitely one of them, because you grow accustomed to your character.
I was honestly, I was secretly up in arms over that.
And this could kind of, because I can understand where VR are coming from. They want to make sure that their game is lived out no matter where you are in the game, so that, you know, a lower level zone doesn't die off with nobody being there anymore because they've all advanced forward. This would kind of help combat these problems, because you'll want to go and relive the game and see what has changed for you. Yeah.
I mean, I'm more of a single character kind of guy. I do make alts, but it's like, oh god, I need a break from my usual people. I'm gonna go make an alt that nobody knows about, but I don't take it seriously at all. You know, I might play it an hour a week, whereas my main gets like 10 hours a week of playtime. And I think a heritage system would actually make me consider alts a little more, because I'd always be curious about, well, what if I was more ogre? What if I was less ogre?
Mm-hmm.
You know, how would this change my experience? And I'm like, well, I'm only level 10. Let's try it. I could see myself deleting a lot of characters and starting them over going,
yeah, I mean, that's the perfect example, though. You know, being not being 100% ogre, they might now look at you and say, you know, you're half-breed. You know, you're bad.
Right.
You know, you are not welcome here amongst the clans.
Mm-hmm.
know,
Yeah, I mean, what if ogres actually have a zero tolerance for half-breeds?
Mm-hmm.
What if actually, even if you're not gnome, the gnomes will accept half-breeds because, you know, they're more advanced and crinkly.
And another thing to look at as well, from a lore perspective, we think about Terminus. Terminus was a planet unknown to all of us.
Mm-hmm.
None of the races were from Terminus.
Right,
So,
we're all aliens.
So
We're all
over
immigrants.
hundreds and hundreds of years of combating and fighting and peace and all this, you could also look at the lore and add that twist of, you know, interbreeding, kind of opening up possibilities, advancements to be made going forward for expansions, for lore stories. Maybe the gods got angered because all of a sudden the Darkmere and the humans united, and now you've got a separate race that they could introduce into the game later on, because now you have the outcasts and so forth and so forth. There's so much that they could do and bounce around with this, and it kind of opens up endless possibilities for them to take their lore anywhere they want to go.
Right.
So
I just think it would be quite interesting.
Yep.
I mean, we all know I love Scar, okay? But I do enjoy the ogre's lore. I would think it'd be interesting to make a half ogre, not necessarily half ogre Scar, because that'd be one spiky bugger. But
I just had a picture. Take it off.
Even from a non-role player's perspective, I would actually get a lot of enjoyment out of a heritage system in terms of Pantheon, simply because I could make a lot of jokes. Like, you know, I'll be right back, guys. I gotta make a new character. I got me a hankering for some big ogre booty. You know?
And another thing to look at, though, is also the PvP aspect of it all. Somebody who creates maybe a half-breed, you know, you're now kill on sight for both, the good and the bad.
Right. Maybe
that
opens up almost like an exile style of play.
Exactly.
Obviously, they'd have to start you in a place where you had access to vendors and all that stuff. But maybe that's like, you know, it's like, oh, I'm not welcomed by these guys or these guys, but these ones took me in. You know, that adds a little spice to your personal story.
Yep, so you don't have, like, you know, just guild, you know, you haven't got guild on guild combat. You got guild on guild on guild combat all of a sudden going on. And it's a three-way system. You're all fighting each other, so that adds another twist to it and makes it even more...
I mean, even from a role player's perspective, this opens up, like, an amazing amount of opportunities. because now you can roleplay as a half-breed who's accepted, a half-breed who's an exile. You could roleplay as a person who doesn't like half-breeds, you know? So there's a lot of... This, to me, it kind of just screams RP's paradise.
Yeah. And we're going to now throw something else into the mix that even adds more confusion, maybe. We hope you guys have followed us or been able to follow us so far. So we had a look at this as well from... Obviously, the heritage system would be artificial. It's something you create before you go and create your character. But what if we could... what if we could add player heritage? So we thought about adding a joining system into the game as well. And this adds a unique twist to the whole ideal of this. So, what you could basically do, I actually wrote something on this relating to first name, last names on the forums. And basically, I thought, you know, when we were talking about the heritage system, it popped into my head, hey, we could take that and add that to this, and then you have, you know, this. So basically what it is just for prime example now, you have House Lexa, House Yarnila. We now join together. We kind of get married. You know, we join a bond. And now my character is called Yarnila Greymoon, and Lexa's character is called Lexa Akkus. Now I can choose to bond with him, and when I go and create another character by using this heritage or joining system, that character could then be called Yarnila Greymoon Akkus, or actually let's go with a different name, Carnila Greymoon, or Carnila Greymoon Akkus, and vice versa for Lexa as well. He could then call his twink Bob Akkus.
I don't know because I keep all my alt names secret.
Or Bob Akkus Greymoon. But you would only always be limited. That means that going further down the line, creating alts using the joining system, you will never be able to take on the other player's last name. You can only use your last name in combination with theirs.
It's one or the other or both kind of thing.
Exactly. And this is...
Before people start on this, I'm just going to say, joining is not marriage.
Yes, yes.
So, cool your jets.
Exactly. So it's kind of like, you know, you have two houses that are forming a partnership together of sorts, and through that you would also be able to progeny by these determinations you've made. You started off with your heritage system with your artificial father and mother, gone from there, and now you've gone in-game and you've created a partnership with another player. So that adds another twist to the whole situation. Meaning that basically, if I do decide that my Darkmere bonds with Lexa's Scar, we're now limited on those choices made when we go and create an alt. But like again, it's all choice. You can also still turn off that you want to use the heritage system to create an alt, or turn off the joining system. You do not have to do this. This just adds that twist to it. The way I see this working would be very simple. They wouldn't have to do much. A simple NPC to register the joining. Nothing special. But we also thought about, what about giving these people that actually use this system something worth noting? So, what about if these people join together, they each receive a ring, and it activates when they group. If they're in the same group, they get a very small XP boost.
Right, like Elder Scrolls Online.
Exactly. The idea is from Elder Scrolls Online, and if you don't have your partner in the group and you're wearing that ring, you might get a debuff of sorts that affects you. a very small one. And we kind of loved that idea when it was brought up that, you know, ESO had something like that. We thought this would actually be a pretty cool feature to add in general, and something like that. Maybe there's something else people could do. Yeah, so what's your thoughts on that, Lex?
Well, I mean, I'm going to address the fact that, you know, I'm one of those min-maxers out there that a small XP boost is not going to replace a ring for me that gives me 10 strength, 10 constitution, 10 stamina, whatever it's called, you know, and 100 hit points. It's not replacing that. I don't care. My wife can come downstairs and beat me over the head with a frying pan. I am not putting it on. However, you should have an option to, like, maybe attach it to a neck piece or something. You know, like a lot of people do. Which, not even the point. I like the idea because when I first played Elder Scrolls Online, I started playing it with my wife. And she found out the whole marriage system. She's like, oh, do you want to do this? I was like, okay. And when I got the ring, I was like, oh, this is cool. You know, you're level 1 or whatever. You don't have a ring anyway. So I was like, okay, yeah, this is kind of cool. You know, it's the first time I had experienced an item that was actually worth using for at least a little while. And it does help you get through that boring starter phase of a game. So maybe that potentially could be all that it's used for, just to get you past a certain point where it's like, now you've got better gear, you don't really care about this. The debuff, again, it would be very, very small. Like, oh, -1 to something, you know, something just ridiculous. You can be like -1 hit point, who cares? And just to have that little debuff icon that's like loneliness or something, or longing. I'm longing for my need. You know? I would see that and be like, oh, that's funny. You know, so it's not necessarily a bad idea. I can see a lot of people not liking it, in which case, don't do it.
Maybe you know, and another thing that this could also add as well with the joining system. I mean, let's say, for instance, you don't go for the heritage system from the get-go, but you want to use a joining system. Maybe because you've bonded with somebody else, you might now be able to enter their city, whereas you wouldn't earlier. So those are little twists that you could add. This isn't groundbreaking, this isn't breaking the dynamics of the game, this isn't giving you a benefit over others, per se. Yes, you now can go and enter the city, but, you know, that's not something that really is going to...
Well, you may be able to enter a city, but that doesn't mean that all the vendors are going to talk to you, that doesn't mean the quest people are going to talk to you. That just means that you can walk from this point to this point and not get your head chopped off. That's it. You know? And in that way, it's like because I'll give you a perfect example. My wife and I were playing a game. I always play evil characters. Always. She goes to town. So, she has to make 2 trips because we're so far away from the evil town that all I can do is sit outside and twiddle my thumb and be like, yep, game is fun. You know, she comes back, I give her more stuff, she goes and sells it. You know, this would actually alleviate a lot of that, or at least slow the downtime a little bit, because then I can go with her. Even if the vendor doesn't talk to me, I'm standing right next to her, and I give her this gear to sell. She sells it, boom. You know, just it adds a very small amount of the word I'm looking for.
Depth.
Not depth. Convenience. Haha. Just a very small amount of convenience, and that when the couples are playing, the convenience actually goes a long way to helping them enjoy the game. You know? But would I really get a benefit from being able to walk in a throne fast as a Scar? Probably not, because I'm pretty sure none of the vendors are going to want to have anything to do with me. My wife is still going to have to be around. So
it could also have a negative effect as well, though. For instance, now, let's say, for instance, Lex's wife's human character and he's a Scar. They walk into Throne Fast together. Now all of a sudden it could have a negative effect. Everybody's starting to scream and oh my god. And now during that time when they are together in Thronefast, maybe they get locked out of certain vendors. Maybe they only have access to certain buildings. So you can also add that twist of negativity to it as well. Not everything has to always be
positive.
A benefit. But just to clarify on this joining system as well, we're going to take it one step further. Just because now I've created a bonding with Alexa, when I now go and create a alt, through that system, through the joining system, I am not bound to Alexa with that character. I could then go out and bond with Frogzor. And that adds that uniqueness, that storytelling.
And then I throw a fix is cheating on me.
And then basically you could go and look up the family tree, for instance, on a website, and you could see who or where this whole family lineage came from. And you'll see that, you know, you got Yanila and Lexa, Yanila and Frogzor, Yanila and Joshua, so and so, and you see all these
right.
different mixes and matches, and you can kind of almost connect the dots and see where you're headed. So like in real life, basically.
I mean, there's a lot of people who, they might not necessarily be like me, who's a statistical junkie. Like back in the day, I used to take like DPS log files and stuff, and I used to chart them out and all that. I mean, it was fun for me. Give me a break.
Mm-hmm.
So these statistics pages, stuff like, you know, the family tree, which is just visual, doesn't really give you any benefit, but a lot of people would actually kind of enjoy just seeing it there for the novelty of it, you know?
Yeah.
And you'd actually, if as a developer, you'd actually spend more time actually drawing the tree, like getting the tree all looking pretty and stuff, than actually doing all the mechanics behind it. So it's like, it's pure fluff.
Mm-hmm.
But fluff that some people would enjoy.
Definitely. So yeah, that's basically the whole idea and where we've expanded on it. Could you see this system replace the progeny system entirely, Lex?
Well, I'm going to start this off by saying VR, I'm so sorry. I don't like the progeny system. I never really have. I'm more a fan of this heritage system from Dayjhawk than I am of what I've heard so far of the progeny system. Because there's nothing saying I can't use my main, my Scar Dialord Lexer. You know, it's saying that what this does is this heritage system gives me more depth. It gives me an alternative route to expand my character. Not necessarily for any benefit, but just for my own entertainment or enjoyment. But it also tells me that I can make an alt if I want to. If I want to experience something different, I can. Versus what we know of the progeny system right now, it's kind of like New Game Plus, right? Where this character gets shelved, you make another character, and you get a little bonus. That's what I understand of it right now. That's not really appealing to me. So, could they? I mean, could they work hand in hand? Absolutely, they really could.
That was going to be my next question. Could this coexist?
Absolutely.
Definitely.
I mean, it is. If the progeny system basically kind of unlocks almost a heritage system or works in a similar way to where my alt becomes a little more interesting, but it also makes my main a little more interesting without restricting access to him, then yeah. You know, perfect. That would make me want to play an alt a little more. Instead of, oh, you know, I've got downtime between groupings or raiding or whatever I'm planning to do that day. Instead of running out and farming all day or the next hour or whatever, maybe I start trying to go woo the ladies to find me a partner so that I can make me a heritage, you know?
Yeah, I can definitely see, you know, this as a replacement or coexisting with the progeny. Obviously, it's the first installment on the idea of what VR want to do, and we will have to basically wait out and see where they take their idea, and maybe approach this then later on down the line. But this is also a system that could be used at a later point as well. Now, this is something that could be implemented further down the road without even affecting the game or basically creating such havoc when it comes out. So you could be playing the game for 2-3 years, and all of a sudden this heritage system gets opened up. It's not going to destroy the game. It's just going to add to the game.
Right, because it's primarily superficial. There's very little disruption. Granted, you could say stuff like, if you were to pick a background story, background story for your parents or whatever, or say, you know, your main was an armor smith. So obviously, being the son and or daughter or whatever of blacksmith or an armor smith, you kind of know a thing or two, right? So maybe you start the game with like 10 in blacksmithing. Well, it doesn't affect the max. It just kind of like cuts down like 5 minutes of skilling up. Not that big of a deal, to be honest. But it adds a little spice to it. People could argue that that is giving people an unfair advantage. But the advantage isn't that great. It's almost minute. It's like you're saving, what, 10 minutes? Maybe 30 if you're trying to figure things out. You know?
Well, you know, and just to quickly touch on it with the unfair advantage for either way, the normal way or the heritage way, if this was something, again, because it's down to choice, it's something you can choose to do.
Right.
You know, that shouldn't really outbalance that.
Right. See, now if it was something like if it were something like, because, you know, your progeny or whatever character was a blacksmith, your next alt or whatever, his max blacksmithing is 205 instead of 200. That's an unfair advantage. That's a huge unfair advantage in my book, because I'll be the first one up in arms going 5 higher than me. Oh no, that I cannot get, that will not fly. You know. No, trust me, I'd be the first one knocking on the door going, oh hell no.
But I think to point out real quick that we kind of forgot to mention early on, when you're looking at alignments at 50-50% for your heritage system, you know, would they both start, or would you both have, do you start on either but with poor faction? Another thing that we also discussed is, like, you know, where would you start if it is directly 50-50? As a choice, because what we want to try and keep it simple. The 3% inclinement does kind of add a little more intensity to the whole situation, because you've got to really balance that out. But if we went with the 25, 50, 75 and 100% example, and you had 50-50,
well, let's make this easier on you. Let's just say, instead of going up by the 25 increments that we had originally said, make it an odd number, 33%. And that way you're never 100%, because, you know, if my father's an ogre, my mother's a dark mirror, obviously I'm going to have a little of both. There's no way around it. So that's where the 33% will come in, because you can only be 99% one way, but you'd still have a little of the other. It'd be like, it's definitely mentionable, but still, a little more accurate, I guess.
So yeah, that was basically the heritage system, Theorycraft, today. And this will also...
ideas out of our butts.
Fun?
Throwing ideas out of our butts.
Yep. And we thank you, Dayjhawk, for bringing this to us so we could get the show rolling. It was definitely a really cool idea, and we hope you liked the advancements we made. So, two things to note for next week. Next Thursday, we'll be talking about future races, possibly for Pantheon. Not just looking at fictionalized races, but also looking into the lore where there might be possibilities through the races lore. We know that there are two kinds of Mir. You have the Dark Mir and the Dread Mir, I think they were called, which could possibly come into play later on down the line. You have the three factions of the Halflings, where you could technically go and expand from. You got the humans, where there's plenty of room to expand that, with barbarians and whatnot. But we'll also be looking at, due to the idea on the heritage systems, half races, so half ogre, half Mir, half halfling. Actually, what is a half halfling?
Quarterling. I call them bite size, but whatever.
Oh, and one thing I wanted to bring up on a funny note. This was brought to me this morning because I didn't sleep. Sintro shared a joke with me.
Oh God.
How do you know that Lexa came from a C-section?
I missed this one. It was in Discord, I missed it.
Because there's always a scar that comes with it.
Nice.
Yep, so I'll throw that joke out there. Credit to Sintro. I don't know if I got it 100%, but yeah. And
Thank you, Sintro.
For all of the people out there that are interested in Pantheon, pre-alpha packages will be available until the 20th of December this year. And after that, pre-alpha will be stripped from the VIP pledges. So if you are still interested in getting into pre-alpha, you have the chance until the 20th of December this year to do so. PantheonMMO.com/join is where you'll have to go to sign up and have a look at those pledge packages. If you're still on the fence and thinking about it, you've only got 6 more days to do so, and then pre-alpha will be scrapped from the VIP pledges. Thank you, Lexa, for throwing in the link. And any final thoughts you want to bring to chat?
You know,
before we bring in Shine?
Like we said before, this heritage idea, it's not something that we necessarily want or will ever see in Pantheon, but it is certainly a very interesting idea. I would hope that some game in the future would consider something like this, you know, because you really do open up the amount of playable races in theory. You know, you go from, like, say, having human, elf, and dwarf, and now all of a sudden you've got, like, everything in between. And, you know, sky's the limit kind of thing. And if you have 8 races, then my God, there's so many combinations you could do. Granted, obviously, exceptions, stuff like math, not doing it.
Yeah, so like Lex said, you know, this is not something we want for Pantheon. It has to be in Pantheon. It's something out of respect to VR we wanted to bring up for them to you know, to just get the idea rolling, because of the passion and respect we have for them for what they're trying to do. We decided to, you know, let's bring this system and see what we could do in Pantheon with it, if it was something. It's not something we necessarily will see in Pantheon, or they might even not.
They might try it, and it might not be a good fit. That's for them to decide.
Yeah. So, Shy, are you there?
Yes, I am.
So, do you have anything from chat that's worth mentioning? Questions or ideas or...
Questions,
Not
comments,
really.
or concerns?
Not really. There weren't a lot of questions. A lot of comments, but no questions.
Okay.
Make me so sad.
Yeah. Well, any comments worth mentioning?
No, I mean, they're basically just the same things that you guys said.
Okay. Well, chat.
It was quiet. I think it's
That's okay, that's okay. We probably put a lot of you guys to sleep.
Yeah.
Listen to us while crawling into bed. We'll put your ass right to sleep.
Yep. So we hope you liked this discussion, the idea. Hope it sparked some ideas of your own. Got your minds rolling.
Yeah,
Think on it. And we'll see you on Thursday, where we talk about future races. We'll bring up some crazy ideas again from Dayjhawk. He presented us with some, so we'll bring those up as well, and we'll have a look at where we could possibly take this.
Can you guess the next race down the line for Pantheon?
Oh, that's a good question. Ooh. So, with that, guys, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you all next Thursday. Take care.
Safe, everybody.
Have a good night.